The ancient ship. The vast expanse of space stretched before the alien fleet, silent and unyielding. The Zarks, a mighty and fearsome race, had conquered many worlds and subjugated countless civilizations. Their ships were the pinnacle of technological achievement, designed to overpower any enemy they encountered. And yet, as they approached the blue and green planet known as Earth, something unexpected caught their attention. At the edge of the solar system, an ancient ship drifted quietly in space. The Zark's fleet had been sent to Earth with one simple task: to conquer the humans. They had learned of Earth's existence from distant galaxies, and in the eyes of the Zarks, humanity was nothing but a weak species, primitive and defenseless. So when they detected the human ship, they saw it as nothing more than an old relic, long abandoned by its creators. General Threx, the leader of the Zark's fleet, sneered as he gazed upon the outdated ship on his screens. "A relic of the past," he muttered. "We'll crush it with ease. There is no way this ancient ship can stop us." The ship in question, the Exodus, had been built centuries ago by humans who had long since left it behind. Forgotten by time and by the very people who had once built it. It was considered a museum piece, an outdated and useless ship drifting through space. The Zarks had no idea that it was far more than just a forgotten relic. "Send a scouting vessel," Threx ordered, not giving it a second thought. He believed it was nothing more than a waste of time, but even a small alien fleet had to check for potential threats. The Zark's ship approached cautiously, their sensors scanning the human vessel. As the scanning data appeared on the screens, the Zark's officers began to chuckle. The readings were nothing more than old energy signatures from the past. There were no signs of life aboard the ship. It was as if the ship were a ghost, trapped in space, a hollow shell of its former self. "Send a transmission," Threx ordered, still mocking the human ship. The words were simple and dismissive. "This is the Zark's fleet. Prepare to surrender your planet." The message was sent with all the arrogance of a species that had never faced a true challenge. They expected Earth's leaders to fall in line, to offer up the planet in fear of the Zark's power. As the transmission went out, the Exodus remained eerily silent, floating in space like a forgotten tomb. The Zarks continued to watch it, waiting for a response, but none came. It was almost as if the ship had no interest in anything the Zarks were saying. But then something unexpected happened. A low hum came from within the ship. At first, the Zark's officers paid no attention. They assumed it was some malfunction, the last remnants of the ship's once functioning systems coming to life. But as the hum grew louder, the energy readings from the ship began to spike. "What's happening?" one of the Zark's officers asked, his voice filled with confusion. The sensors were showing an increase in power, far more power than the ship should have been able to generate. "It's impossible," Threx muttered, his eyes narrowing. The ship's systems were ancient, and its weapons should have been long dormant. Yet, as the energy readings continued to climb, the Zark's officers began to realize something was terribly wrong. The hum turned into a low roar, and suddenly, the ship's weapon systems powered on. The Zark's fleet watched in shock as the ancient human ship began to glow with a strange, unearthly light. "General, the ship is powering up," one of the officers cried out. "It's activating its weapons." Threx's face hardened. "Impossible. It's just a relic. There's no way it could have such power." But the readings were clear. The ship was charging its energy cannons, and the intensity of the power being generated was unlike anything the Zarks had ever seen. Suddenly, the Exodus fired. A massive beam of energy shot from the ship, tearing through space with unrelenting force. It struck one of the Zark's scout ships before anyone could react. The alien ship shattered into pieces, its remains scattering through space like dust. The Zark's fleet froze. The destruction was so quick, so sudden, that they couldn't comprehend what they had just witnessed. "What is this ship?" Threx whispered in disbelief. The alien fleet, once so sure of its power and dominance, now found itself facing something they could not understand. This old human ship, this relic they had mocked, was not just a forgotten piece of history. It was a weapon, an ancient, dormant weapon that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. And now it had awakened. Hazark's officers scrambled to react, but it was already too late. The Exodus wasn't just defending itself, it was launching an all-out assault. The once quiet ship was now a deadly force, its weapons cutting through the Zark's ships with precision and power. General Threx had underestimated the humans, and now his fleet was paying the price. The Zark's fleet, shaken and unsure, realized that they were up against something they couldn't control. The tables had turned. This ancient, forgotten human ship was no longer a laughingstock. It had become a nightmare. The Zark's fleet had just made their first mistake. They had underestimated Earth, and now they would regret it. The Relic awakens. The first shot had been fired, and the Zark's fleet was in chaos. The once mighty aliens, known for their power and superior technology, now found themselves facing a threat they couldn't comprehend. The Exodus, a ship they had mocked and underestimated, was now firing on all cylinders, its ancient weapons tearing through the space around it. General Threx's heart raced. The Zark's fleet had never encountered anything like this before. Their ships, built with advanced weaponry and shields, were simply no match for the power of the old human relic. He barked orders to his officers, trying to regain control. "Deploy the defensive shields," Threx shouted, his voice tight with fear. But even as the shields activated, they were no match for the weaponry of the Exodus. Another blast rang out, and Zark's scout ship was obliterated in an instant. The remnants of the ship scattered through space like shattered glass, leaving the rest of the fleet frozen in fear. "General, we're losing ships at an alarming rate," an officer reported, her voice quivering. Threx clenched his fists, staring at the view screen where the Exodus glowed ominously in the distance. The human ship, once thought to be obsolete, was proving to be a force unlike anything the Zarks had faced before. "Increase firepower," Threx ordered, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need to take that ship down now." The Zark's ships launched their own assault, firing everything they had at the Exodus, but it was as if the human ship wasn't even trying. Its energy shields absorbed the Zark's blasts without so much as a flicker. The Zark's fleet fired again, but each shot was blocked with ease. The Exodus responded by launching a volley of counterattacks, its weapons more advanced than anything the Zarks had seen. The shots were precise and devastating, each one finding its mark. The Zark's ships were being picked off one by one. "Shield integrity at 30%. Another officer shouted, panic setting in. "We can't hold much longer, General." Threx slammed his fist on the console. He had never experienced such a loss before. His fleet, the strongest in the galaxy, was being outclassed by a ship that should have been nothing more than junk. As the Zark's fleet scrambled to regroup, Threx's mind raced. What was this ship? How was it able to wield such power? He had underestimated the humans, thinking their technology was primitive, but now he was witnessing something far beyond his understanding. "General, there's something we don't understand about this ship," one of his officers said, trying to make sense of the situation. "The Exodus isn't just an old ship. It's been enhanced. Somehow. It's as if it has technology that shouldn't exist." Threx's eyes narrowed. The Exodus wasn't just firing on them with advanced weaponry. It was turning their own technology against them. The Zark's fleet was designed to overwhelm and crush any enemy, but the human ship was taking their attacks and then striking back with terrifying precision. He couldn't allow this to continue. He needed to break through the human ship's defenses. But the more he ordered his fleet to fire, the less effective their attacks became. Then, a horrifying realization struck him. The Exodus wasn't just defending itself, it was adapting. As if the ship had a mind of its own, it was learning from every attack, improving its defense and counterattacks in real time. "Something's wrong," Frex muttered, his voice low and filled with dread. "This ship is alive." The Exodus was more than just an ancient relic. It was a living weapon, a relic from a time when humanity had far greater knowledge than anyone had realized. It had been abandoned, yes, but not forgotten. Somewhere, hidden deep inside its walls, was a consciousness, an intelligence that had been waiting for this moment to come alive again. General Threx could feel the weight of that realization pressing on him. He had underestimated the humans, and now he was facing the consequences. His fleet was dying, one ship at a time, and there seemed to be no end in sight. In desperation, he gave the order to retreat, but it was already too late. The Exodus fired another beam of energy, this time slicing through the center of Azark's destroyer, sending it spiraling into the void of space, broken and burning. "Retreat, now," Threx shouted, but his command was drowned out by the explosions echoing through his fleet. Ships were being torn apart, and the Zark's fleet was falling apart at the seams. The human ship was relentless. It had unleashed its fury, and there was no stopping it now. As Threx watched in helpless rage, he knew the truth. The Zark's fleet had been outmatched by something they had thought was nothing more than a relic. And now, Earth's old ship, forgotten and abandoned, was teaching them a lesson they would never forget. The Zarks were not the conquerors they had once believed themselves to be. They were nothing more than prey in the face of humanity's unexpected power. The Exodus was not just a ship. It was a weapon that would change the course of history, and the Zarks would never be the same again. The fury of the Exodus. As the Zark's fleet scrambled to retreat, the Exodus wasn't about to let them escape so easily. The ancient human ship, long thought to be a relic of a forgotten time, had ignited into a force of pure destruction. Its weapons, powered by an energy unknown to the Zarks, were relentless. The once proud Zark's fleet was being torn apart piece by piece. General Threx's mind raced as he watched the carnage unfold. His ships, the mightiest in the galaxy, were being reduced to scrap by an enemy they had believed to be insignificant. He had never considered that the humans had hidden such power. This was more than just a ship. It was a harbinger of doom. "Maintain formation," Threx shouted into the chaos, trying to regain control. But his words were drowned out by the sound of explosions. Another Zark's ship was hit by a precise blast from the Exodus, its shields failing in an instant before being obliterated by the weapon's unrelenting force. The wreckage of the ship drifted through space, a haunting reminder of the power the human ship possessed. "General," one of his officers called, her voice shaking, "we've lost another vessel. The Exodus is not just fighting back. It's hunting us. It's targeting our weak points." Threx clenched his fists, his anger and frustration boiling over. "I know," he growled. "I can see it. They're not just defending themselves. They're attacking with precision, like they know exactly how our ships operate." The Zarks had always prided themselves on their technological superiority, but now they were facing an enemy that was doing the unthinkable, outsmarting them at every turn. The Exodus seemed to know their every move, anticipating their tactics and using their own weapons against them. "Is there any way to break through their defenses?" Threx asked, his voice tight with desperation. His fleet was crumbling, and the humans were showing no signs of mercy. The officer at the console shook her head. "No, General. The Exodus's shields are too strong. We can't penetrate them, and we can't outrun them. We're trapped." Threx slammed his fist onto the armrest of his command chair. The Zarks were supposed to be the rulers of the galaxy, and now they were being outclassed by a human ship that shouldn't even exist anymore. His pride, his power, was slipping through his fingers like sand. "We need to regroup," Threx said, though he wasn't sure what good it would do. "All ships, pull back to the edge of the system. We'll regroup and find another way to take them down." But even as he spoke, another explosion rocked the fleet. A massive Zark's warship, one of the largest in the fleet, had been struck by a beam from the Exodus. It split in half, the two sections drifting apart like broken fragments of a once mighty empire. The Zark's fleet was being shattered, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "General, I don't think we can make it," the officer said, her voice barely a whisper. Frex turned to face the view screen, where the glowing form of the Exodus hovered in the distance, a dark and silent reminder of the humans' wrath. He had underestimated them. He had believed that they were nothing but weak, primitive creatures, easy to conquer and subjugate. But now, the Zarks were paying the price for that arrogance. The Exodus had become more than just a ship. It had become a symbol of humanity's resilience, a weapon of unimaginable power. It was a force that even the Zarks couldn't control, and the consequences were clear. The Zarks had underestimated the humans, and now their entire fleet was at the mercy of this ancient, seemingly forgotten ship. "General," the officer said urgently, "we can't hold on much longer. The remaining ships are in retreat, but we're losing more of them every minute. The Exodus is relentless." Frex's heart sank. The realization hit him hard. It wasn't just a few ships that were in danger. The entire Zark's fleet was being obliterated. There would be no recovery from this. They were no longer the conquerors they had once been. He could almost hear the mocking laughter of the humans in his mind. The same laughter that had once echoed through the corridors of the Zark's ships when they first saw the Exodus. Now, the joke was on them. The humans had turned the tables, and there was no way to stop it. "Prepare the escape pods," Frex ordered quietly, his voice filled with resignation. "We're abandoning ship. The Zark's empire is no longer here to rule this galaxy." The remaining Zark's ships began to retreat, their once proud fleet now a shattered and broken force. The Exodus continued its assault, but it was too late. The Zarks were fleeing, scattering into the vastness of space, leaving behind nothing but destruction and a dying empire. As the Zark's ships disappeared into the distance, Frex could only watch as the Exodus drifted, still glowing in the cold, empty void. The humans had won. The ancient ship had turned the tide, and the Zark's fleet had been reduced to nothing more than a memory. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans, who had once been dismissed as insignificant, had shown that they were far more than anyone had imagined. The Zarks had learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate Earth. The last stand of the Zarks. The remnants of the Zark's fleet, scattered and broken, had no choice but to flee. The once mighty warriors of the galaxy, feared by countless species, now found themselves fighting not for conquest, but for survival. General Frex watched in grim silence as his fleet's few remaining ships drifted aimlessly toward the edge of the galaxy, every instinct screaming that the worst was yet to come. In the aftermath of their crushing defeat, the Zarks had retreated into their last stronghold, a massive fortress world hidden in a remote system. Frex was not a man to admit failure easily, but as he stood in the command center, looking at the shattered fleet, he knew they had made a deadly mistake. "General," one of his officers spoke up, her voice shaky. "We've sent out distress signals to the Empire, but it will take weeks for any reinforcements to reach us. We're on our own." Frex's fists clenched. Weeks? That was far too long. The Exodus could destroy what was left of their fleet before help even arrived. He had seen the human ship's relentless fury with his own eyes. It was as if the ship was alive, hunting them down with calculated precision. It wasn't just a battle, it was an execution. "We need to figure out a way to fight back," Frex said, his voice low and dangerous. "We can't wait for reinforcements. If we don't act, the Exodus will hunt us down one by one." One of the senior officers approached, holding a holographic display. "We've been analyzing the data from the last engagement," he began, his tone uneasy. "The Exodus uses some kind of energy field that seems to render our weapons ineffective. It's almost as if it can predict our every move. Our best chance is to understand how it works and find a weakness." Frex looked at the display, his mind racing. The Exodus had proved to be far more than a ship. It was like a living predator, its sensors finely tuned to detect even the slightest shift in their tactics. But if there was one thing the Zarks were good at, it was adapting. They had faced countless enemies and had always found a way to overcome them. This wouldn't be any different. He wouldn't let it be. "Prepare the fleet," Threx ordered. "We're going to make our stand. But this time, we'll do it on our terms. I want every ship ready for a full offensive. We're going to test their weaknesses. If they think they can wipe us out, we'll show them they're wrong." But as Threx's orders were carried out, something unsettling gnawed at him. There was something about the Exodus, something beyond its weaponry, beyond its intelligence, that he couldn't quite grasp. It was as though the ship wasn't just a machine. It was a force of nature. How had humans built something so powerful, and why had it been left abandoned for so long? His thoughts were interrupted by a commotion at the door. A young officer rushed into the room, breathless. "General, we've just received new intel. The Exodus is headed straight for our position." Threx's heart skipped a beat. There was no time to waste. "How much time do we have?" "Less than an hour," the officer replied. "They're on a direct course." Threx's mind raced. They were still regrouping, still in disarray. If the Exodus attacked now, they would have no chance. It was clear that their efforts to fight back would have to be launched immediately. He turned sharply to his fleet commander. "Prepare the ships. We won't run from them again. If the Exodus wants a fight, we'll give it to them." The Zark's fleet, battered and weakened as it was, began to move into formation. Threx had one goal in mind: to drive the Exodus back. The Zarks were determined to show the humans that they were not so easily defeated. But as the fleet positioned itself, Threx couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Exodus wasn't just coming for them. It was coming to finish what it had started. And in a strange way, Threx almost respected the human ship for its relentlessness. It wasn't like anything the Zarks had ever faced before. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of nature. The silence was deafening as the Zark's fleet waited for the inevitable. Threx stood at the helm of his command ship, looking out at the stars beyond. He knew that this would be the final battle. This was their last chance to stop the Exodus, or be wiped from existence. The first of the Zark's ships engaged their weapons, firing powerful plasma blasts into the void as they waited for the Exodus to make its move. But the human ship, as expected, didn't hesitate. It launched its counterattack with chilling precision, its weapons cutting through the darkness like a blade. General Threx's eyes narrowed. This was it. The Zarks were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. The Exodus had come to finish what it had started, and the Zarks had no idea what was in store for them. As the battle began in earnest, the Zark's fleet would quickly learn that the humans' fury was not to be underestimated, and in the end, it was not the power of their weapons or shields that would determine their fate. It was the tenacity of their will to survive. The wrath unleashed. The battle had begun, and the Zark's fleet was in full retreat once again. The Exodus moved like a shadow through the battlefield, its every move calculated and precise, its weapons tearing through the Zark's ships like paper. The human relic had become a nightmare for the Zarks, one they couldn't escape from no matter how hard they tried. General Threx watched helplessly from his flagship as his fleet was dismantled piece by piece. He had underestimated the human ship, thinking that it was just a relic that could be easily destroyed. But now, as the wreckage of his fleet floated in space, he realized how gravely wrong he had been. One of the Zark's destroyers tried to break formation and make a run for it, its engines firing at full power. But before it could get far, the Exodus opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that obliterated the ship in an instant. It was as though the Exodus had known exactly where to strike, taking out the Zark's vessel's engine with surgical precision. "General, we're losing everything," one of Threx's officers said, panic creeping into their voice. "We've lost contact with several ships, and the remaining ones are falling back. We can't hold on much longer." Threx gritted his teeth. "We don't have the luxury of retreat. If we run, we'll be hunted down one by one. We have to fight, whatever it takes. He turned to the communications officer. Send a message to the remaining fleet. Tell them to regroup and form a defensive perimeter around the flagship. We'll hold them off, even if it's our last stand. As the communication was sent out, Threx felt a pit in his stomach. This was their final chance. The Zarks had always prided themselves on their strength, their technological prowess. But this human ship, this ancient relic, had shattered all their beliefs. The Zarks weren't the hunters anymore. They were the prey. The Exodus was relentless, its energy weapons never missing their mark. The Zarks' fleet was crumbling, and with every blast, their once proud ships were reduced to space debris. Threx knew that it was only a matter of time before the Exodus reached his flagship, and when it did, there would be no escape. Desperation began to creep into the Zarks' officers. General, we can't stop it. It's too powerful. We need to retreat, or we'll all be destroyed. But Threx's mind was made up. We stand and fight, he said coldly. We may have lost the war, but we'll make sure they remember the Zarks until the end. The final moments of the battle were a blur. The Zarks' ships, now mostly crippled, made a last-ditch effort to protect their flagship. Their shields flared up in a desperate attempt to block the incoming fire from the Exodus, but it was useless. The human ship tore through their defenses like paper, the energy blasts scorching through the hulls of the ships in seconds. One by one, the Zarks' ships were destroyed, and their commanders, those who still held on to the hope of survival, were consumed by the fury of the Exodus. The human ship had become a symbol of vengeance, its every move a reminder that the Zarks had underestimated Earth and the humans who inhabited it. General Threx stood at the helm of his ship, watching the destruction unfold around him. There was no way to win. His fleet was gone, and his empire was crumbling. The Zarks were no longer the rulers of the galaxy. They were nothing more than a memory. And then, as if to confirm his worst fears, the Exodus appeared on the view screen, its dark silhouette looming like a predator preparing to strike the final blow. Threx's heart pounded in his chest. He had failed. The Zarks were done. General, we have to abandon ship. An officer shouted. It's over. But Threx refused to leave. We fight to the end, he said, his voice unwavering. This is the fate we've earned. The Exodus fired once more, and the final explosion rocked the Zarks' flagship. The ship's systems overloaded. The hull cracked, and the lights flickered. The battle was over. As the Zarks' flagship slowly drifted into the void, its remaining crew members abandoned their posts. There would be no more fighting, no more running. The Exodus had won. The Zarks were no more. In the cold emptiness of space, the Exodus lingered for a moment, as if savoring the victory. And then, without a word, it turned and disappeared into the blackness, leaving behind nothing but the shattered remnants of the Zarks' fleet. For the Zarks, it was the end of an era. For the humans, it was the beginning of something much greater. And the galaxy would never forget the day when Earth's relics unleashed hell upon the Zarks, showing the universe that humans were not to be underestimated. You said, the aftermath. The silence that followed the destruction of the Zarks' fleet was deafening. The once mighty empire of the Zarks was no more. Its ships, its warriors, and its generals, everything, had been reduced to floating debris. Nothing remained of the mighty force that had once terrorized the galaxy, except for the wreckage left behind. The Exodus had finished its grim task, and now, with the destruction of the Zarks, it drifted through the void, its engines quiet. The battle was over, but its repercussions were far from it. In the command center of the Exodus, Captain Reeves stood quietly, gazing out of the viewports. The destruction they had caused was immense, but there was no joy in the victory. The humans had won, yes, but it had come at a terrible cost. We did it, Lieutenant Kara spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of disbelief. We stopped the Zarks. The galaxy is safe. Reeve didn't respond immediately. He simply stared into the endless void of space, watching the remains of the Zark's ships slowly drift apart, like broken pieces of an empire. "It's over for them," he said finally, his voice tinged with a sorrowful calmness. "But it's just beginning for us." Kara looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean, Captain?" "The Zarks were just one empire, one threat," he said. "The galaxy is still full of enemies, some more dangerous, more cunning, and more powerful than the Zarks ever were. And now, with the fall of the Zarks, the balance of power will shift." The silence lingered. The crew of the Exodus had fought and bled for this moment, and now they faced an uncertain future. It was true that the Zarks would no longer pose a threat, but their sudden and brutal defeat had sent a message across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the underdog, no longer the species others could mock or underestimate. "You think the galaxy will come after us?" Kara asked, her voice laced with concern. Reeve turned to face her, his eyes hard. "The galaxy is watching, and we've just made ourselves the most dangerous target in the universe." As the crew of the Exodus began the slow process of returning to Earth, they knew that their mission was not just a military victory. It was a declaration. Humanity was no longer a passive species, subject to the whims of alien empires. The humans had proven that even their most ancient relics could be more than a match for the most powerful of galactic fleets. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. The Zarks were a name no longer whispered in fear, no longer a terror looming over the universe. Humanity's victory was a rallying cry for the oppressed and the downtrodden across the galaxy. Across planets and colonies, species that had long been under the Zarks' boot were beginning to stir. Rebellions started to form, and alliances were forged as the galaxy began to reshape itself. The Zarks had been the keystone of the galactic hierarchy, and with their fall, everything had changed. Yet, as humanity celebrated, Captain Reeve knew something that others did not. The Zarks might be gone, but the Exodus had now become the galaxy's most coveted target. Other empires would come. There would be wars, there would be struggles for power. But the humans were ready. The Exodus had proven its might in the face of a superior enemy. Now it was time to prove that humanity would not be a fleeting power. They would rise and stand firm, not as a relic of the past, but as a force that would change the course of history. As the ship made its way back to Earth, Reeve stood in the command center, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. The journey was far from over. Humanity had shown the galaxy its strength, but now, the true challenge would be holding on to it. The battle for survival, the fight to maintain their newfound power, was only just beginning. "Prepare for re-entry," Reeve ordered, his voice steady but resolute. "We've won today, but tomorrow, the real war begins." The crew nodded in agreement, and the Exodus slowly turned its course back toward Earth. As they entered the atmosphere, Reeve took one last look at the blackness of space. He knew that their victory against the Zarks would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. But he also knew that it was only one chapter in a much larger story, and humanity's place in the galaxy. That was still being written. The rising threat. As the Exodus and its crew made their final approach to Earth, there was no grand celebration. There was no parade waiting to honor the heroes who had just shattered the Zark's empire. Instead, a quiet tension filled the air on the ship. Captain Reeve and his crew knew that their victory over the Zarks was just the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous journey. "We've won," Reeve muttered under his breath, pacing the command deck. "But I'm not sure the galaxy's ready for us yet." Lieutenant Kara stood nearby, scanning the communications data on her console. "The message is already spreading across the galaxy," she said. "The Zarks are finished. But, Captain, so are we, in a way. The Zarks might have been the galaxy's top dog, but that doesn't mean there aren't others ready to take their place." Reeve turned and looked out the viewport, watching as Earth's blue and green hues grew larger. "I know, but the Zarks made the mistake of underestimating us, and that mistake cost them everything." Kara nodded. "The Zarks were brutal, But they weren't the only power out there. The galaxy is full of empires, some even more powerful, and some that have been waiting for an opportunity to strike. Our enemies will be coming for us, Captain. The galaxy is watching. The words hit Reeve hard, but he wasn't shocked. He had known this day would come. It had always been part of the plan. They had taken down the Zarks, yes, but now they would have to face the consequences of it. As they entered Earth's orbit, Reeve could see the bustling world below. His home, the cradle of humanity, now poised to become the new center of the galaxy's stage. Yet, the reality of their position weighed heavily on him. The Exodus, Earth's last hope, was now the galaxy's most wanted target. "We need to fortify," Reeve said, his voice firm. "Earth needs to be ready. We've made powerful enemies, and we can't afford to let our guard down." Kara nodded, turning to begin contacting Earth's leadership. "I'll get the message through to Earth Command. We need every defense system online, and we need to start building alliances before someone else thinks of doing to us what we just did to the Zarks." As the crew worked to prepare for Earth's arrival, the galaxy continued to shift. News of the Zarks' defeat spread like wildfire across star systems and planets. Within hours, various factions, once in the shadows, began to move. Some, seeing humanity's potential, wanted to ally with them, while others, filled with jealousy and fear, began to make plans for confrontation. The Zarks were a major empire, but their fall had created a power vacuum, and in the void left behind, new forces were emerging, some even more dangerous than the Zarks had been. One such faction was the Phyrexian hegemony, a ruthless empire known for its technology and overwhelming military strength. They had watched the defeat of the Zarks with a mixture of curiosity and fear. The Phyrexians had heard the stories of Earth's relentless will to survive, but they had also heard rumors of the humans' terrifying potential. Aboard the Phyrexian flagship, Emperor Jarek stared out at the vast expanse of space. His advisors had warned him about the growing threat that Earth posed, but Jarek was a ruler who feared nothing. Now he was thinking about the future. "Prepare our fleet," Jarek ordered. "The humans are too dangerous to be left unchecked. We will either destroy them or bring them to heel." Meanwhile, on Earth, the news had reached the United Nations and the various governments that oversaw the world's defenses. But there was one question that none of them could answer. How could humanity, so young in the galactic arena, hold its own against the galaxy's most ancient and powerful empires? General Sarah Hale, the head of Earth's newly formed defense coalition, stood before a massive holomap of the galaxy. The Zarks were gone, but in their place, new and even more terrifying threats were rising. Her job was now to protect Earth from those who saw its newfound power as a challenge to their own. "We have to be ready," General Hale said, turning to her fellow commanders. "Humanity has just made a bold statement, but now the galaxy will come for us. Our enemies won't forget what we've done. We've earned their attention, and they'll make us regret it." Across Earth's military bases, preparations were already underway. The human race was preparing for what seemed like an inevitable conflict. The Exodus was the most powerful weapon humanity had, but it couldn't fight a galaxy's worth of enemies on its own. Earth needed allies, weapons, and strategies, and it needed them fast. Back aboard the Exodus, Reeve's mind raced. They had won a battle, yes, but the war, the real war, had only just begun. "Captain," Kara said as she entered the room, "we've received a transmission from the Phyrexian hegemony. They want to discuss terms." Reeve's eyes narrowed. "Terms or demands?" "Could be either, sir," Kara replied. "But we need to prepare. The galaxy is about to find out just how strong humanity really is." Reeve took a deep breath, preparing for what was to come. The victory over the Zarks had set humanity on a new path, one that would lead to either glory or destruction. Whatever happened next, humanity would face its destiny head-on. "The future is ours to write," Captain Reeve said. "Let's make sure it's a future we can live in." And so, as the Exodus made its final approach to Earth, The stage was set for a new chapter in the galaxy, a chapter that would forever change the fate of the universe.